the road from Vancouver, BC to Oregon. The West Coast summer road trip to Southern Oregon is something that I've been enjoying doing for many years. I'm standing at the top of Prescott Park. It's called the Roxy Ann Peak. The majority of the peak is volcanic origin and dates way, way back. It was a very beautiful hike up here. The mountain is primarily covered by oak savanna and open grassland on its lower slopes, and mixed coniferous forest on its upper slopes and summit. Dry and warm, sunny and breezy. It's the beginning of September. Unfortunately, as often occurs in Southern Oregon in summertime, there is a forest fire going on somewhere right now due to lightning, as I was told. The visibility is limited from the otherwise stunning view peak. This time, my hypnosis Q&A from around the world is going to be about my book, my third book, Many Blessings Will Come, which was published about a week ago. Linda Tang, a native, there's a hawk there, a native Chinese, a remarkable healer, a very successful businesswoman, a dream expert, a wonderful human being, and a beautiful soul. She asked me a very interesting question when I sent her my manuscript to read. Oh, by the way, Linda runs weekly waking dream therapy group sessions online. So her question was, "Hi Kemila, I'm interested to know what motivates you to share these stories. Writing can be laborious, especially for a second job." Of course, Linda also speaks from her own experience, as she has published a book on her own. And as she's a dream expert, her book is called Navigate Life with Dreams, a guide to happiness and peace by working with your own dreams. As for my experience, to answer the question, what motivates me to share those stories, by the way, in my book, there are 21 case stories. I actually wrote them not on one go. It's 21 stories are selected from my over 10-year practice. And some of the chapters actually were published in my blog post. So what happened was back in the day when my practice was not as busy as today, some of the stories would stand out. And on that day, I normally would have some time in the evening when that particular story was still fresh in my mind. So I would write them so that I could publish them on my own blog post, my ongoing blog post. So that was a motivation. So actually those stories were written during those time, mostly throughout a few years' time. And the latest one in my book probably was written at least 5 years ago. And sometimes it feels daunting to write a book with over 200 pages. But looking back, I wrote one evening at a time throughout a few years, so it didn't feel hard work. Yes, those stories were actually written one piece at a time, normally that same evening, back in the day. Today, there are still a lot of interesting stories coming out of my work. I don't have time anymore, actually. Mostly I just catch up with my work every day. So it was not until 2019, one afternoon, I was sitting in my office. That was 4 years after I had published my first book, Past Life Regression, and I was about to finishing up the second book, Carol's Lives. And one afternoon, suddenly I had this idea of putting Some of the stories I wrote, published in my blog post, and some of the stories that were not even published, to put them together to form a new book. I didn't have the title, but I did see in my mind's eye the book coming into being. I even, in my mind's eye, saw 3 parts of the book. There are 7 stories in part 1, recovering the inner commitment, and 9 stories in part 2, discovering inner gifts, and 5 stories in part 3, uncovering inner wisdom. So in my experience, Linda, writing a book is not laborious. One chapter at a time, one story at a time, one page at a time, one paragraph at a time. I didn't have the pressure, luckily, to have a deadline, so I could take it as long as it takes a kind of approach. And but the laborious part for me would be editing, and luckily I got a very good and passionate and excellent editor. She's Melanie Christian, and so she helped me tremendously on, putting them together in a complete book. Call me strange. I'm one of those people who actually can enjoy reading my own writing over and over. Therefore, even editing together with Melanie back and forth was not laborious for me. I enjoyed reading my own writing many times over. I guess, as they say, labor of love doesn't feel labor at all. What else am I going to do with my time if not doing what I love to do? Speaking of time, that was a challenging part. In the past 6-7 years, my private practice has become very, very busy. Many weeks and months I didn't really have time focused on the writing, and of course also traveling always gets in the way. Happily, I don't want to compromise that. Traveling does define me. So yes, Linda, writing seems to be my second job or even third job, and I intend to change that, see what happens in the years to come. I do feel I want to focus more on my writing, but we'll see how that goes. So that's a long answer to your question, Linda. The short answer is what motivated to share these stories was that the stories were so beautiful and touching that I really just didn't want them to go unshared. So this is what Linda Tang has to say about my book. Many blessings will come. With a treasure trove of fascinating past life stories, Kemila paints a lucid map of soul journeys, each shining with wonder and intrigue, and merging into a river of light and wholeness. This unique perspective of lived experiences provides the clarity and wisdom necessary for healing and enlightenment. Thank you, Linda.